Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into how Colorado is going green,
Hmm.
specifically when it comes to new construction.
Right.
So we're going to be looking at the Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code.
Okay.
It's a pretty detailed document published on June 1st, 2023.
Wow.
And it's all about making sure new buildings are set up for things like solar panels,
Yeah.
electric vehicles,
Hmm.
and all those cool electric appliances that everybody's
Uh,
been talking about.
Yeah, you know what I think is really interesting about this is it's kind of like a blueprint
Okay.
for sustainable building and how to make it easier for people to
Really?
go green.
And not only easier, but cheaper too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely a big factor,
For sure.
especially as technology keeps changing.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, can you give us a sense of who this code actually applies to?
Sure.
Is this just for like massive skyscrapers, or does it impact like my
Right.
cousin building a tiny home in the Rockies?
It actually covers both. It applies to residential buildings, so that's your houses, apartments,
Okay.
and then also commercial buildings, everything from offices to shopping centers.
Gotcha. So both ends of the spectrum.
Exactly. But the key here is that they understand not everyone can afford to go completely green like right away.
So there's some wiggle room built in.
Absolutely. There's this thing called the substantial cost differential waiver.
Okay.
So let's say following the code for something like your electrical system
Right.
adds more than 1% to the overall cost of all your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems combined.
Okay.
You can actually apply for a waiver.
That makes sense. Like I love sprinkles on my ice cream,
Huh?
but if they cost like an extra dollar, maybe not.
Right, exactly.
So this waiver is kind of saying, hey, we get it sometimes going all in on green tech right now might be a
Yeah.
stretch financially.
Exactly. And it goes even further. They also have a waiver for buildings that are impacted by natural disasters.
Oh, wow.
So think about like those devastating wildfires that Colorado has had.
Right.
Rebuilding after losing your home is already so tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this waiver recognizes that and offers some flexibility.
It's almost like the code is saying we're aiming for sustainability,
Yeah.
but we're also human.
Right.
And we get that life throws curveballs.
Exactly. It blends idealism with like practicality.
I like that. And that shows up again when we look at the construction documents that this code requires.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not just talking like basic floor plans here, right?
It gets pretty detailed.
Like what else are we dealing with?
You need to show exactly where your solar panels could go, and that's labeled as the solar ready zone.
Okay.
Then you have to calculate how much weight your roof can handle
Well,
to make sure it doesn't cave in.
makes sense.
You have to map out where all those electrical conduits will run and even plan where water from condensation will drain.
Wow. That seems like a lot of upfront planning.
It is.
But I guess the upside is that it would prevent headaches down the road. You're not ripping out walls later to install something that you didn't anticipate.
You got it. It's all about minimizing those costly retrofits that come up
Yeah.
when you don't think ahead.
For sure. And there's also that phased approval option, right?
Yes. That's a really cool feature.
So if I know I want solar eventually,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't picked out like the exact panels yet,
Yeah.
I can still get started with like prepping the roof and the wiring.
Exactly. You can get part of your solar EV or electric ready setup approved.
That's so handy.
Yeah.
But with all this planning and construction, I bet there's some serious inspections involved.
Oh, absolutely. Inspections are crucial to make sure everything's done correctly and
yeah.
safely.
Of course.
And there are actually separate inspections for the solar readiness,
Okay.
electric vehicle readiness, and general electric readiness of the building.
So you can't just like drywall over that wiring before the inspector has a chance to see it.
No, no, no. And it's really important because it can actually be a lifesaver. I remember hearing a story about a homeowner who skipped an inspection for their new solar panel installation.
Okay.
And it turned out the wiring had this tiny little flaw that could have caused a fire.
Wow.
But thankfully, the inspection caught it.
That's a good reminder that those inspections, even if they seem like a hassle, are there for a reason.
Exactly. They're really important.
Yeah.
And to make things even easier, the code lets you use approved third-party inspectors.
Oh,
So you have more options.
flexibility and safety.
Okay.
Two very good things.
Absolutely.
Now let's get to what I think is really exciting, going all electric.
Okay.
What is this code doing to prepare new homes for a future without those gas-guzzling appliances?
That's where those electric ready provisions come in.
Okay.
And it all starts with those gas-powered appliances that most homes still rely on, like your furnace and water heater.
So things that we might want to swap out for electric versions down the line.
Exactly. And the code gets really specific here.
Right.
If you're installing a gas furnace.
You also have to run a dedicated electrical circuit to that location.
Oh, wow.
And not just any circuit.
Right.
It has to be sized to handle an electric furnace with the same heating capacity.
So even if I'm sticking with gas for now, the wiring is already in place for a future electric upgrade.
Exactly.
That's clever. But what about like actually connecting the new furnace?
Well, they've thought of that too.
Okay.
You need a receptacle or a junction box connected to that circuit, and it has to be within 3 feet of where that gas appliance sits.
So it's like having that electrical welcome mat rolled out.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you're ready to go electric.
Right.
So no more like ripping up walls or running wires through finished spaces.
Hopefully not.
That's a huge win for your wallet and your sanity.
Absolutely. And there's one more detail that I think is great.
What's that?
The code requires that you actually leave enough physical space for that future electric appliance.
So I can't just like shove a massive electric furnace into a tiny closet that was designed for a compact gas model. Nope. The code is all about forward thinking.
I see.
Making sure those future upgrades are smooth. And remember those condensate drains?
Oh, yeah?
Well, electric furnaces and heat pumps create condensation too, so the code requires a dedicated drain for that as well.
It's like they've thought of everything.
I think so.
Well, it certainly sounds like they've covered a lot of bases.
Yeah.
We've talked about how this code applies to different types of buildings.
Right.
The importance of those detailed construction documents and inspections, and how it's preparing homes for a gas-free future.
Yeah.
But what about harnessing the power of the sun? Let's dive into the solar aspects of this code after a quick break.
Sounds good. All right, so let's talk solar.
Okay, yeah, let's shed some light on that.
Haha. All right, so we've mentioned this solar ready zone a few times.
Right.
But what does that actually mean?
Yeah, it's not like you can just slap solar panels anywhere on your roof.
Right, exactly. There are definitely some rules about where they can go
Right.
and how much space they need.
So, like, how much space are we talking?
So for residential buildings,
Yeah.
this zone has to be at least 300 square feet.
300 square feet.
Okay, so picture like a square on your roof that's roughly 17 feet by 17 feet, just to give you a sense of the scale.
Gotcha. So it can't just be any 300 square feet.
No, it has to be in a spot that gets good sunlight
Okay.
pretty consistently.
So if, like, most of my roof is shaded by trees, am I out of luck?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
The code says that ideally it should be facing south,
So,
or at least somewhere between 110 and 270 degrees relative to true north.
oh, wow. Okay, so there's some wiggle room there.
Yeah, just to make sure it's capturing the most sunlight throughout the day.
Makes sense. And what about, like, if I have a flat roof?
Oh, if you have a flat or low slope roof, you actually have a lot more flexibility
Okay, that's good.
in terms of placement.
That makes sense. Now, what about those things that pop up on roofs like chimneys and vent pipes?
Oh, yeah.
Don't those create shadows?
They do, and those obstructions can be a real pain.
Yeah, because wouldn't that mess with the solar panel's efficiency?
Exactly, and that's why the code has rules about setbacks.
Setbacks.
Yeah, basically, depending on how tall that obstruction is, you need to keep your solar-ready zone a certain distance away,
Okay.
just to make sure it stays sunny.
So it's like playing a strategic game of roof Tetris,
Uh-huh. Exactly.
making sure you have enough usable space
Right.
for those panels.
And each section of that usable space has to be at least 5 feet wide
Okay.
and 80 square feet in area.
Wow, so it's got to be a decent chunk.
Yeah, so you can't just have like these long, skinny strips, even if they technically add up to 300 square feet.
Gotcha. So it's designed to accommodate those standard solar panel sizes.
Exactly. It's all about practicality.
Practicality, I like that.
Yeah.
Now, I remember you mentioning something about roof load calculations.
Oh, yeah.
What's that all about?
So this is where physics comes in.
Oh,
Solar panels are great, but they do add weight to your roof.
right. And we don't want them crashing through the ceiling.
Exactly. So your construction documents have to show that your roof can handle the extra weight.
Okay, so it's not just about finding a sunny spot. You also have to make sure your roof is structurally sound enough
Yes, exactly.
for solar.
So you need to know your roof's dead load capacity,
Head load.
which is basically the weight of the roof itself.
Okay.
And then also the live load capacity, which is the weight of things like snow, rain, and in this case, solar panels.
So it's all about making sure those panels are up there securely soaking up the sun and not causing any structural headaches.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about solar. Let's shift gears to electric vehicles.
Okay.
I know we touched on the different levels of EV readiness,
Right.
But I think it's worth like breaking those down a little further.
Yeah, it can be a little confusing.
It is like, what does EV capable even mean if it's not actually ready to charge a car?
Right. So let's think of it like you're preparing for a party.
Okay, a party. All right.
So EV capable light is like sending out the invitations. You're laying the groundwork, but the party's not happening just yet.
God, yes.
So you need a conduit running to your parking space
Okay.
that's big enough to handle a 40-amp circuit.
Mm-hmm.
And you need enough room in your electrical panel for future upgrades.
So it's not about immediate charging,
Right.
but more about making sure that pathway is there
Exactly.
for when you're ready.
It's all about minimizing disruption and cost later on.
Okay, and then what's next?
So then we have EV capable.
EV capable.
This is like reserving space at the party.
Okay, I'm reserving a spot.
So you've got that conduit.
Yeah.
And you've also made sure your electrical panel can handle that future charger.
So you're not actually plugging in and charging yet,
Not yet.
but you've made sure you won't blow a fuse when you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's clearly labeled.
Okay,
So you don't accidentally use that reserve capacity for something else.
makes sense. And then what's the final level?
Then we have EV ready.
EV ready.
This is like the party is in full swing.
Okay, the party's happening.
You've got the conduit, you've got the panel capacity, and you have the actual receptacle installed.
So plug in and charge.
Exactly.
So if I'm building a new home, the code requires at least one of my parking spots to be EV ready.
That's right. Assuming you have a dedicated parking space,
Right.
like a garage or a driveway.
Gotcha.
Now, for larger residential buildings and commercial buildings, the requirements get a little more complex.
How so?
They use percentages based on the total number of parking spaces,
Okay.
but the principle is the same.
Okay.
A mix of those readiness levels makes sure enough spots can transition to full EV charging as needed.
It's like future-proofing your parking situation.
Exactly.
Now, what about those super fast DC fast chargers?
Oh, yeah.
You see those at like charging stations and stuff?
Right.
Don't those charge cars way quicker than the standard ones?
They do, and the code actually recognizes that
Okay.
by letting you swap out a certain number of those EV-ready spaces
Uh-huh.
for DC fast charger installations.
So one fast charger could potentially offset the need for several standard EV spaces.
Exactly. That's the idea. It incentivizes providing that rapid charging option,
Okay.
which is especially important for commercial locations where people might only be parked for a short time.
Makes sense. So it's all about giving people options and making that transition to EVs
Yeah.
as seamless as possible.
Right.
Now, we've talked a lot about prepping for the future, but this code also seems really focused on safety,
Yes,
especially when it comes to all that electricity flowing around.
absolutely. One thing that really stands out to me is the attention to detail
Okay.
when it comes to electrical safety.
Give me an example.
For example, the EVSE,
EVSE.
that's the actual charging equipment
Okay.
that has to meet specific safety standards.
Gotcha. So not just any old charger will do.
Right, we're talking UL 2202 and UL 2594.
Okay.
These are all about preventing things like electrical shocks or fires.
So these things have to be like rigorously tested and certified to make sure they're safe to use.
Exactly. And even those small details, like making sure that conduit is properly capped off and
Right.
those lower levels of EV readiness, that's there for a reason too.
To prevent debris and moisture.
Exactly. It
Right.
prevents that stuff from getting in and causing problems later on.
It's those little things that can make a big difference
That's
when
it.
it comes to safety.
Yeah, and we've covered solar and EV readiness pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, we have.
But there's one more area I think we should talk about,
What's that?
and that's those electric-ready provisions for appliances inside the home.
Yes, we touched on that earlier,
Yeah.
but I am really eager to dig a little deeper into how this code makes it easier
Okay.
and more affordable to switch from those gas-guzzling appliances
Yeah.
to cleaner electric alternatives.
So let's do it.
All right, so we're back and ready to dive into those electric-ready provisions for appliances inside the home.
Okay, let's do it.
So I know we touched on it a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
but I'm really interested to get into those nitty-gritty details of how this code makes going all electric easier and more affordable later on.
Okay, so picture this. You're building a new house and you decide to go with a gas furnace for now.
Okay, sticking with gas.
Maybe you're not ready to make the jump to electric, or maybe it just doesn't fit in your budget.
Yeah, makes sense.
But this code says, no problem, we've got you covered.
So even if I'm team gas furnace at the moment, I still need to plan for a potential electric future.
That's exactly it. The code requires you to run a dedicated electrical circuit to that spot where the gas furnace is going.
Okay.
And not just any circuit. It has to be sized to handle an electric furnace that has a similar heating load.
So it's like that electrical pathway is paved and ready to go, even if I'm not driving on it just yet.
Exactly. And they've also thought about actually connecting that future electric furnace.
Oh, okay. So would I still need an electrician to come out and rewire everything?
Not necessarily in addition to that circuit. The code says you also need a receptacle or junction box right there within 3 feet of your gas furnace.
Okay.
And it has to be hooked up to that circuit. So it's like you've got a designated plug just waiting for that electric furnace to show up.
Oh, so it's as easy as unplugging the gas furnace and plugging in the electric one.
Well, you'll still want a qualified electrician to handle that final connection
Okay, yeah.
and make sure everything is safe. But you've saved yourself a lot of hassle and money
Right.
by having that infrastructure in place.
And I can't forget those condensate drains we keep talking about.
Oh, yeah, those are important here too.
They are.
Electric furnaces and heat pumps make condensation too, so the code says you need a dedicated drain for that.
It's like they've thought of everything.
I think they really tried to.
Yeah, and as we've been going through this code, I keep thinking about how forward-thinking it is.
Yeah,
It's not just about building homes for today. It's about building homes for tomorrow.
exactly. It recognizes that technology is always changing. Right.
And our homes need to be able to change with it.
But I imagine some people push back on this, right?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, change is hard, and I bet some builders don't love these new standards, especially if they think it's going to cost them more.
That's a fair point. There's always going to be some resistance to change, and construction is no different.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that this code isn't trying to make things harder or more expensive for builders.
Right.
It's about creating a better future for everyone.
More sustainable future.
Exactly. And when you look at it long term, those upfront costs are probably going to be less than what you'll save on energy.
Yeah, like with solar panels and electric appliances.
Right. And as these technologies become more common, the cost of installation and maintenance will go down too.
And we can't forget about the environmental benefits.
Oh, absolutely.
Less reliance on fossil fuels, that's a big step towards fighting climate change.
A huge step.
It's a win-win for the planet and our wallets.
For sure. But even if we all agree this is a good thing, rolling it out across the state and maybe even beyond is a whole other challenge.
It is. It's going to take a lot of work from policymakers, builders, and even homeowners to make this transition happen.
So what do we need to do?
I think education is key.
Right.
We need to make sure everyone understands why these changes are important and what they'll mean in the long run.
Yeah, so it's not enough to just have this code. We need to make sure people know about it, understand it, and really get on board.
Exactly. And that's where things like public outreach campaigns, training programs for builders, and even just having open conversations about the future of sustainable building can really make a difference.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
It has.
I feel like we've learned so much about how Colorado is trying to build a greener future,
Yeah.
one building at a time.
It's been great exploring this with you. This code is really like a roadmap to a better future, and it's awesome to see how it's leading the way for other states.
And for anyone listening who wants to learn more about this code, we'll include links in the show notes where you can find the full document.
Sounds good.
So if you were designing a new building, what other future-ready features would you include? Let us know in the comments. And that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.